What if the reason you are still poor is not that you are lazy, careless, or unwilling to sacrifice? You can wake before sunrise, work until your body aches, and still finish the month with almost nothing left. That outcome feels deeply unfair because most of us were taught that hard work naturally leads to financial security. But hard work is only an input, while income depends on how the economy prices and rewards that effort. Wealth depends on what remains after housing, food, transport, healthcare, debt, taxes, and unexpected emergencies are paid. Security depends on whether one difficult week can erase the progress you spent several years trying to build. So the better question is not why hardworking people fail, but why effort converts into so little financial progress. To understand that problem, imagine an ordinary worker named Alex who does almost everything responsible adults are advised to do. Alex arrives on time, accepts extra shifts, avoids unnecessary luxuries, and tries to save whatever remains after every payday. Yet each month feels strangely identical, because the salary enters quickly and disappears before Alex can move forward. The first reason is uncomfortable but important. Effort and pay are related, although they are never the same thing. A caregiver may carry enormous physical and emotional responsibility, while earning less than someone making decisions from an office. A cleaner may work harder with their body than an executive, even though the executive receives a much larger income. A warehouse worker may move hundreds of boxes, while an owner earns from every box moving through the entire system. This difference does not prove that one person is more valuable, intelligent, or deserving than another human being. It shows that markets often reward scarcity, bargaining power, ownership, and leverage more strongly than exhaustion alone. Leverage means that 1 hour of work can influence far more value than a single person could produce directly. A machine allows one worker to produce what previously required several people working for a much longer period. Software can be created once and delivered repeatedly, without rebuilding the entire product for every new customer. A business owner can benefit from the combined output of employees, equipment, distribution, reputation, and accumulated capital. An asset can continue generating returns after its owner has stopped actively working for the day. However, someone paid only for time faces a natural ceiling because every person receives the same limited number of hours. Working longer can raise income temporarily, but it can also damage health, relationships, judgment, and future earning ability. This is why the hardest working person in a room is not automatically the person who captures the most economic value. The second reason is that higher productivity does not guarantee that workers receive an equal share of the gains. New machines, better software, and improved organization can allow a company to create more output from every working hour. In theory, those gains could appear as higher wages, shorter working weeks, safer conditions, or stronger financial security. In practice, the gains are divided among wages, profits, executive compensation, investment, taxes, and returns to owners. OECD evidence shows that labor income per hour has failed to keep pace with productivity in part of its membership since the mid-1990s. The exact pattern differs across countries, industries, firms, and workers. So productivity growth should never be treated as a universal promise. Alex may become faster and more efficient, while the company receives most of the benefit from that improvement. Without bargaining power, scarce skills, strong labor institutions, or competing job offers, asking for a fairer share becomes difficult. This creates a strange reality in which society becomes richer on paper, while many workers feel financially motionless. The third reason is the cost of living treadmill, where income rises but essential expenses move just as quickly. Alex finally receives a raise and briefly feels that years of effort are beginning to produce visible progress. Then rent increases, Groceries become more expensive, transport costs rise, and insurance consumes another part of the gain. The salary is larger, but the distance between income and survival remains almost exactly the same. That distance matters because wealth is not created by income alone, but by the portion that remains available to save and invest. By mid-2026, real wages remained below early 2021 levels in roughly one-third of OECD countries, despite strong employment. This does not mean every worker became poorer, but it shows how slowly purchasing power can recover after inflation. Housing is often the largest force keeping that gap small because people cannot easily choose to stop needing shelter. A recent OECD assessment reported that around 2 in 5 low-income tenants spent more than 40% of disposable income on rent. When housing absorbs that much income, saving becomes less a question of motivation and more a question of arithmetic. Alex cannot budget away a rent payment that already consumes most of the money available after basic deductions. This is why two people earning the same salary can experience completely different levels of financial pressure. One person may live near work, share costs with family, enjoy good health, and carry no expensive debt. Another may travel 2 hours daily, support relatives, pay market rent alone, and face irregular medical expenses. Their discipline may be similar, but their starting positions and exposure to risk are completely different. The fourth reason is financial fragility. Because poverty makes ordinary problems more expensive and harder to contain. Imagine that Alex depends on a motorbike or inexpensive car to reach work every morning. When the vehicle breaks, Alex does not only receive a repair bill, but may also lose a paid shift. The missing wage then makes a utility payment late, which creates a fee and forces Alex to borrow. That loan removes money from the next paycheck, making the following month even more vulnerable to another surprise. A small mechanical problem has now become a chain of lost income, penalties, interest, and future stress. This is why lacking savings is not merely the absence of money, but the absence of protection against cascading consequences. In the United States, only 63% of adults said they could cover a $400 emergency using cash or its equivalent in 2025. That figure describes one country, but the mechanism of emergencies becoming debt appears across many different economic systems. People with greater savings can pay once, while people without savings may keep paying interest long after the original problem disappears. Low income can therefore create higher effective prices for credit, transport, housing deposits, insurance, and missed payment penalties. The fifth reason is job quality. Because having work does not automatically mean having stability, protection, or a route upward. The International Labour Organization estimated that 284 million employed people lived in extreme poverty during 2025. It also reported that about 2.1 billion workers remained in informal employment in 2026, often without reliable social protection. These workers are not refusing employment, because many are working long hours under uncertain and vulnerable conditions. They may lack predictable schedules, paid leave, enforceable contracts, unemployment protection, or safe working environments. Employment can prevent immediate hunger while still failing to create the surplus needed for education, investment, or home ownership. This is the central contradiction behind the phrase working poor. Labor is present, but financial mobility remains absent. The sixth reason is the difference between earning income and owning assets that can grow or produce returns. Labor income usually stops when the worker becomes sick, loses a job, retires, or simply needs to rest. Assets such as a business, productive equipment, property, or diversified investments may continue producing value without constant labor. This does not make asset ownership effortless, safe, or morally superior, because every asset carries costs and risks. However, ownership changes the direction of compounding. Because returns can be reinvested to generate additional future returns, Alex must first create a surplus before buying an asset, while an existing owner can use one asset to acquire another. That difference may look small at the beginning, but it can become enormous after many years of repeated compounding. Rising house prices have also made ownership harder for younger and low-wealth households across many OECD economies. OECD research shows that having homeowner parents increasingly raises the likelihood of becoming a homeowner as an adult. Families transfer more than money, because they may also provide housing, education, contacts, childcare, confidence, and protection from emergencies. Two equally hardworking people can therefore enter adulthood with completely different amounts of time and opportunity. At this point, some viewers may argue that personal responsibility still matters, and that argument deserves serious consideration. Skills matter because scarce and transferable abilities can improve a worker's options and strengthen their negotiating position. Habits matter because avoiding destructive debt and maintaining a savings routine can reduce preventable financial damage. Choices matter because changing employers, relocating, training, or starting a business can sometimes transform a person's trajectory. Hard work is not useless, and telling people that effort never matters would be both inaccurate and deeply discouraging. But personal responsibility becomes misleading when it pretends that everyone chooses from the same menu of realistic options. Not everyone has the same health, safety, education, legal status, transport, childcare, family obligations, or local job market. Society also cannot solve low pay by telling every cleaner, driver, caregiver, cook, and warehouse worker to leave essential work. If everyone successfully escaped those jobs, the economy would still need somebody to perform them every single day. The question is, therefore, not whether individuals should improve, but whether essential work should permanently require financial insecurity. There are also reasons for cautious optimism, because economic rules and labor market outcomes can change over time. Minimum wages, collective bargaining, worker protections, competition policy, and tight labor markets can improve how productivity gains are shared. Affordable housing, accessible healthcare, childcare, education, and public transport can reduce the amount of income consumed by survival. Better social protection can prevent one illness, accident, or layoff from destroying several years of responsible behavior. For individuals, the practical lesson is not to stop working hard, but to connect effort with greater leverage and protection. That may mean developing a scarce skill, using better tools, negotiating more effectively, or moving toward a more productive employer. It may also mean building a small emergency buffer before chasing returns that promise excitement but carry serious downside risk. Whenever possible, owning a small diversified piece of productive growth can gradually reduce complete dependence on selling time. None of these steps guarantees wealth, and none should be used to shame people whose constraints are unusually severe. They are simply ways of improving the conversion rate between effort, income, resilience, and long-term ownership. The deeper social lesson is that a healthy economy should reward useful work without requiring exhaustion as proof of deservingness. Hard work without bargaining power can remain cheap, even when the work is necessary and physically demanding. Hard work without savings can be erased by one emergency that arrives at the worst possible moment. Hard work without ownership can stop producing income the moment the worker is unable to continue. Hard work inside a high-cost system can feel like running faster on a treadmill that keeps becoming steeper. So perhaps the real question is not why hard-working people remain poor, but who controls the conversion between work and wealth? Which force has shaped your financial life most strongly? Effort, opportunity, skills, family support, luck, or the system around you.